Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. Welcome to another episode of Not So Average. I'm your host, Alistair. Before we dive in, please take a moment to follow and share this podcast that helps spread our conversations to even more people. Every little bit helps, and we're seeing the steady growth of this channel thanks to you. So thank you so much to the community. Now, today, I'm thrilled to have Haley Daniels with us. Although we both attended the same school, it wasn't until after, I think it was about 2018, that we really truly connected over our shared passion for finding purpose and staying motivated through some big life milestones. I've always admired Haley for her inspiring journey, from her times as an Olympic canoe slalom athlete to her dynamic roles in the corporate world. I'm excited to dive into our conversation and highlight Haley's path to success and how she's overcome all of the challenges along the way. Please join me in welcoming Haley. Hey, Haley.
Awesome. Yeah, no, happy to be here.
I'm so glad that we could actually make this work, because you being out in Canmore means I don't get to see you as often.
I know, it's tricky. We were just talking about that, how it's like, I miss a lot of people in the city. There's a lot of things I miss about the city, but
you're in your happy place, though.
I'm in my happy place. There's definitely a trade-off living in the mountains, though. It's the opportunity cost, right? Taught us that in university. But yeah, like I love being close to the mountains. I love looking out our window and like seeing the sunrise on Holling and the sunset on. My drive to work is like the most beautiful drive, and in the summer I can bike to work, and I'm biking the Legacy Trail and stuff like that. So it's super nice. But
Dream.
I do find things in the city, like food options, endless. Like we get to go to, where are we going to eat tonight? Okay, we can go to bar burrito, or fast food after 8 p.m. isn't a thing in Canmore unless you want to go to McDonald's or A&W. So it's okay, we're grabbing a pizza from the grocery store and putting it in the oven or something. But anyway, so food options. But the other part I find is just the networking side of things. In the city, you have like endless networking events, and there's always like luncheons. And when I worked at RBC and did stuff there was like luncheons and women in business and all these things going on. And in Canmore, it's a lot of digital meetings and it's less personal. And I think that there's just a lot less people, like the conversations that I have with my friends, and I love my friends, but the community there, a lot of our conversations are like, what's happening with the snowpack? And it's like a funeral. Oh my gosh, there's a persistent layer. And like you go to the city and people are like, what's a persistent layer? So like, yeah.
I'm racking my brain right now because I'm sure my brothers told me this, but nope.
Yeah, persistent layer is a very deep layer in the snow in that season that if an avalanche goes, it's going to be very large because it's deep and it's vulnerable. So it's not it's very faceted, so the snow doesn't stick together. Anyways, all these things I've learned from loving snow activities. So I really started to lean into networking in Canmore and figuring that out. I just applied to join the chamber of the Bow Valley Chamber.
Oh, wow.
Like that. And
what's the involvement with that?
I think it's like a mentorship role and things like that, but just really missing, like randomly running into people like that, that random encounters that you have in the city, because there's so many people in a small density. Where in town, like you can go to the grocery store and you always run into someone, but sometimes I honestly go to the grocery store at like off hours, so I'm like in and out, but because you're always going to run into someone, but it's not always the same conversations. So I do miss the really career focused buzz of the city, and that's what I love about the crew of people that we know through university. Yeah.
I always appreciate when you make it in. It seems like when you're here, you're generally doing some talks and stuff like that, but I'm sure that will be unraveled when we ask you a bit more questions. This kind of section is around sports journey and your advocacy. You've had an incredibly diverse life. from wildland firefighting to now managing strategic partnerships at the Banff Center. But before all of this, you were an Olympic canoe slalom athlete. Can you share what sparked your journey towards becoming an Olympian?
Yeah, I almost was going to correct you there because once an Olympian, always an Olympian.
Yeah.
My brother reminded me of that the other day, actually.
I like that.
No, but it's a lifelong journey to get there. So proudly wear it for the most part. I always want to, anyways, there's lots of things there, but where do I start? Okay. When I was 14 years old, I was a pretty rambunctious, energetic young lady who just did a lot of sports and got into a lot of things and come from a long line of athletes. My grandpa played for the Alouettes and the Blue Bombers.
Wow.
Back when they like wore the like leather hats and the knickers. I don't even know if they're called knickers. The like weird woolly pants and not what football gear is now. And then my whole dad's side of the family, everyone was a high performance athlete. Everyone was on the national team for water skiing. My dad was on the national team for water skiing and swimming. My uncle made the Olympic team for water polo the year that Canada boycotted the Olympics with Russia. Yeah, so just like always around sport. And when I was in my teens, snowboarding, and I was exposed to kayaking, and I really got into it. And a coach I randomly went to a training, or it was a training camp / to learn how to kayak, and they said to me, I really think you can go far in this, like you understand it. So I went and showed up to nationals that year and did terribly. I swam. So swimming means when you like flip over and fall out of your boat, but it invoked excitement in me. I was like, okay, I might suck at this, but I really like the community and I really want to get better at this. So my parents signed me up for training, and I was getting into a lot of trouble when I was a kid.
Okay.
Quite a bit of trouble.
Didn't see that side coming.
Yeah. I grew up in Calgary and exposed to like drugs and alcohol and not good things. I could have gone down a very bad pathway because I was very social. My parents were noticing that and kept taking me to training instead of parties. And yeah, it really just took off from there. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question of where I got into it, but
no, that
yeah.
definitely did. I'm curious because you mentioned your parents obviously played a part in getting you to these practices and events and stuff like that. You're obviously very close with your family. How crucial was their role in helping you get to where you were, or where you got to?
Yeah, family is everything. Family is everything to me, not only in what it means to me now, but I think support from family and getting to a high level of sport. My parents are both outdoor pursuits graduates, so they had, back when that was like a degree you could get, now it's kinesiology. They went to U of C and got it there. And we just always, every weekend, honestly, I was jealous of a lot of my friends because they would go on trips to Mexico or like all these elaborate vacations. And we have a cabin in Invermere, and my grandpa built it. And it's still such a cool place. It's such a special place in my heart. And he built it from the ground up. He was an electrician, and at the cabin everyone had motorboats and like these super nice boats, and they go wake surfing and water skiing, and we had like old fiberglass canoes. But now reflecting on my childhood and looking at where things went, I love it. Like it really made who my brother and I are today. Like, we didn't go on elaborate vacations, but we went on the coolest back road fishing trips that were like in the most random lakes I've never heard of before. And we would take all of our camping gear and go for the weekend, and we go to somewhere like Baines Lake, BC, or Kukanusa.
Okay.
Kukanusa is a big lake, but Baines Lake, and we'd sit out on the lake, and my dad and brother would fish, and I would just like gawk at turtles. And it was the best thing. And my mom would hang out and read her book, or she would start getting dinner ready. And we were always out on the water, and we grew up with this really cool, my parents' group of friends, and they like raised each other. My parents' group of friends, we'd always go on these canoe trips. And they were like 2-week-long canoe trips with 4 or 5 families. And they were just so cool. Like, they were like so different. And again, like, I was so jealous of Mexico, but now looking back, I'm like, that was so cool that we like camped and went on these like float planes that flew into.
You took float planes as a kid?
Yeah, into like the North Saskatchewan, and I can't even remember the name. It was Paul River in Saskatchewan. and like the biggest leeches I've ever seen in my life. And just so many, yeah, super cool. But it's now that we've grown up from all those families, I'm so close with a lot of them, but that life gave us such a platform to be people in the outdoors. Wow. So 3 of us from those families all became professional athletes. And then everyone's pursued higher education. Some of them are doing their PhD, some of them are doing their masters. And I think it's just playing outside and like respecting that school will come and like learning will come, but like being outside is like one of the most important things you can learn. Is I think what brought me and Hayden to sport. And then Hayden got to a very high level. My brother is Hayden. Yeah. He went to the Youth Olympics, but yeah, just pursuing that.
That's incredible. That's so crazy how in hindsight you reflect on it in such a positive light, but when you're there as a kid, I had similar situations, not so much outdoorsy, but very envious of the family vacations that my friends were up to, but my parents were doing huge road trips. Like we'd take a month or 2 weeks to a month and go travel around the US in a van, pulling motorcycles. So cool. Yeah. So like now that's the stuff that I want to do. Yeah, and you're in a similar spot. You're like, this is how I want to spend my time, but that's amazing. So representing our country at Tokyo 2020 and championing women's canoe as a gender equal sport must have been very transformative. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced in advocating for your sport's inclusion, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, to just simplify and break it down, traditionally in women's canoeing, there's been 3 categories that have been available for men, and there was only 1 that was available for women. And so when I was that young 14-year-old girl, and I got into paddling, I was told there was going to be an opportunity that we were going to be able to go to the Olympics. I started training in canoeing, and the more and more I trained, the more and more I realized that the opportunity was not coming as quickly as they had told us it was going to be.
Oh, really?
I made the national team, and my first World Championships was in Bratislava, Slovakia. And I remember speaking with the other female canoeists about how much adversity they were facing in their national sport organizations and how they weren't being respected on the water, and how people just didn't believe or think that this sport was deserving to be at a high level. And so myself and a global group of female canoeists, we band together, and this was before Facebook and before social media and before like direct DMs, like all of that. So we were like emailing and phone calls on like before even like it was easy to do like global phone calls and stuff like that.
Wow.
And talking about how we're going to stand up to the International Olympic Committee and the International Canoe Federation for gender equality. So it came down to, this is both whitewater and flatwater.
Okay.
To clarify. So it was a pretty big cohort of women that were advocating for this. And we basically started working with Waterloo University's lawyers to start a beginnings of a class action suit. And yeah, we really just started pushing for women's canoeing to be gender equal. And we were ready in London, and they didn't let us go. And we were ready in Rio, and they didn't let us go. And finally, after so much advocacy, letters and media, and getting treated poorly, we were told super outlandish stuff. Women's places in the kitchen and not on the water.
From committees that were responsible for?
People that were in the world of paddling, that some of them were our peers. And I would go to World Cups, and I was not a very good paddler. It took me time to get there, but I would get ran over by another canoe or another paddler, and they would say, "You don't deserve to be here, get out of my way," because they felt that they deserved that time on the water and I didn't. So yeah, there were a lot of barriers, but after our advocacy, we pushed, and there was times I was training my ass off, and I would be like in session 3, and we were in Australia, and it was so hot, and I was so tired, and I was away from my family for weeks or months at a time, and like you're in these beautiful places, but you're still in hotel rooms. And I just was like, is this gonna happen? Are we gonna get there? And I was like, why am I, like, I just had to believe, even though I wasn't sure if it was gonna happen. And finally, I think it was in 2018, No, it was in I can't remember the exact year, but finally they announced that women's canoeing was going to be out of the Olympics. And they were doing that by taking away men's C2.
That's wild.
For a while there, they were putting us against men's canoe or C2 and saying, well, if we put women's canoeing in, we'll have to take men's C2 out. And we're like, yeah, damn, you're going to do that because we have dreams too. And they've had the opportunity this whole time and we haven't. Yeah, I guess it being on the water and pushing for something like that, it just made me, I was an athlete who was passionate about my sport, but when I started advocating for something that was bigger than me, it became leaving a legacy and breaking a glass ceiling through paddling. And that there's no other fuel like that. Like, it's just like, I will wake up because I know I will wake up and I will train hard. Because I know if I don't, this legacy will not be left for future women canoeists.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And I'll share like a short anecdote just on this, but we were in Tokyo, and this is my favorite story of the sport, but we were in Tokyo at the Olympic test event, and we go on these things called conveyor belts. So they're like, basically like escalators in the mall. So you go on an escalator, but basically you like finish your run, you go down, and then you paddle in the flat water, and then you get to this thing and you sit on it with your boat, and then your boat just takes you up. And I knew that I had 1 minute and 30 seconds to get up this, because every single time, because you're like obsessed about these things with the Olympics. But I was on the conveyor belt and I could see Mount Fuji on top of me. It was iconic. And I looked behind me, and one of my teammates, who's 10 years younger than me, was behind me, and she goes, Haley, I have never really realized any adversity in sport. I've always had equal funding opportunities, equal access to coaches, equal treatment at training camps. No one's ever been mean to us. And I remember I was wearing a shorty, so like a short dry top. I remember looking at my arm and like your hair standing up. And I was like, when you have those chills moments, and I was like, holy shit, we did it. She doesn't have to fight anymore because of what we did and our adversity and our fight. She basically gets to now just focus on training and being an athlete, and she doesn't have to worry about that inequalities. So yeah, it just that honestly, that moment made it all worth it for me. Ironically, I ended up fighting for the Olympic spot with her, and I won, and she didn't go to Tokyo, but she was in Paris, and I worked in Paris broadcasting. So it was really awesome to see her there just killing it. But yeah, so there was a million barriers, funding barriers, coaching barriers, but I was so determined that you figure it out.
Yeah. That's a really incredible story. It's so cool after, knowing you for as long as I have, to get these little behind the scenes. It would take a lifetime to learn all the stuff that you've done. And I'm just so grateful that you're able to hop on here and share some stuff. I know that there's going to be so many people listening that are just they're going to be hooked straight to the end. So advocacy and equality has been something that you've obviously been working hard towards. You've been passionate about it. What strategies or experience have been key in driving change and ensuring that the women's sports continue to receive the recognition it deserves?
We still have a lot of work to do in sport, in the corporate world. I feel like sometimes we take 2 steps forwards and then 3 giant leaps back. I think that something that is really important is really knowing how our political landscape is representing us.
The sport?
Yeah.
Okay.
In general, I think equality is not just a sport topic, right? It's all across the board. But I think I don't even know. There's so much there.
Do you mind if we unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say I'm happy to share this. But so within that whole equality fight, my dad came out as transgender. And we use the pronoun she/her. And that's been a whole enlightening an experience of how to support my dad. But I would say that in terms of fighting for that inclusion, whenever someone uses an improper term, I think that's such an eligible teaching moment. So whenever someone says, oh, you're a fireman, I'm like, no, I'm a firefighter. Or a mailman. Or, yeah, we need more manpower here. All of those terms are really not equitable terms. And even just how the language we use, we need to continue to change that language so that it's like, it's human power. It's a male person. It's a firefighter. Like, that is like just a simple, tangible thing that we can change. But we need to like recognize that we're not looking for, when I say we, me as a woman in sport, when I was fighting for equal rights, I wasn't looking for a leg up or an advantage. I just wanted the opportunity, and I wanted an equal opportunity. And so I think that as a woman, I don't want to be taken, a lot of times, we can talk about fire, but I got a couple of comments when I got into the fire department saying that you got here because you're a woman. And I was like, because of the diversity quota that they need to make. And I was like, I worked my ass off to get here.
How did you address that in the moment? Was that one of those points?
No. I think it's really hard when your career, you have to be careful in those moments. And I think that male-dominated industries like firefighting is a really tricky one, because when you are a wildland firefighter, any type of firefighter, if there's a incident, or we would go into the woods and we'd get dropped off by a helicopter, and the only way out is by a radio, and the radio needs to come from your crew leader. So you need to have full respect and trust from your crew leader. So if they aren't saying exactly what you feel is right or good, you still can't call them out, because they're your ticket out of this fire. They're your ticket out of a bog in Fort McMurray. And I learned a lot from these individuals, and they're great people, but I still think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I don't have a blanket answer, but what I would say is recognize when you don't feel like it's right. Okay. Educate yourself of what's good to say and what isn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about your stance on trans women in women's sports and vice versa, because that's obviously something that's out there.
I'm happy to chat about it. I get calls from CBC every time that there's something that goes on with it, with our government, but I don't know. It's really tricky. I think I want someone like my dad to have equal opportunity.
Of course.
Because sport has been something that's pivotal in our life. I have a friend who has a child that might be transitioning, and this person is so athletic and very athletic and loves sport and loves doing things outside and is in high school. And honestly, I hope they don't transition right now, because I want them to be able to do sport. Because sport is so important. Yeah. And right now you're not allowed to do sport if you are a trans woman. You're allowed to do sport, but you have to compete as a man, which that isn't your true gender, right? I don't know what the answer is there, but I know that there's a lot of research with it, and I know that there needs to be testosterone tests and hormone-based things. And what I do know, what I can say with confidence, is that no one transitions to get an advantage in sport. Okay. No one's, oh my gosh, I should become a woman so I can win an Olympic medal. It is so hard to transition. You alienate yourself from a lot of things. It's not accepted in a lot of societies. It's very hard to get a passport. It's going through hormone therapy is really hard on your body. And no one wants to go through that. But if I were in a competitive situation where someone was fighting for the Olympic spot with me and it was a trans woman and they won, I don't know how I'd feel, but I think I'd feel upset. So I don't know.
I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. It's a very difficult subject to have, or a discussion to have with people, because people are quick to have their views. I just like asking the questions, because I don't have a particular stance. I like learning. I understand everybody's got a different perspective. That's probably the beauty of our friend group too. It's so diverse. We got everybody on all different sides of the political spectrum. Yeah. And because of that, I think I'm more well-rounded. So I appreciate you sharing that. So the other section that I'm diving into is about mindset and overcoming challenges. So obviously, as an Olympian, Mindset plays a huge part. Olympic selection requires relentless dedication and a unique mindset. What mental and physical habits did you develop to secure your spot on the Olympic team? And how do those habits influence your daily life now?
Yeah, it's the 80-20 rule. You need to be 20% fit and 80% mentally ready.
Jeez.
Yes, you need to be good at your sport. You need to do it repetitively and be strong and be light and all of those things. But really it comes down to how are you mentally going to show up that day. I learned so much from sport. I hired a sports psychologist, and she was like the edge I needed.
When was that? When did you decide that was like, at what stage of your career did you introduce that?
We got introduced it through our coach, and honestly, my coach literally shaped me as a person. There's so many things I learned from him. And
was this the one that lived so close to you?
Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's such a badass now. He's with his kids and doing super cool stuff. And I honestly, like, him and Lena are like family goals. I tell them that all the time. They're just great. They like get out and bike and ski with their kids. And he's the executive director for Alberta Whitewater Association. And he taught me so many things, even about sponsorships. I remember when I first started working with sponsorships, he was like, you can work a part-time job and do sponsorships, or you can spend the time you would do at a part-time job working on sponsorships. And I took that to heart, and I worked on it, and I raised a ton of money. And it was hard at first, right? Because it's, okay, part-time job, you show up and you make money. Sponsorships, you don't show up and you make money. But if you put the same amount of time into it, and that's what I like, I mean, that thread is like, when you put time into something, dedicated time, it grows, it gets better. And that was the thread in everything I did in sport. So I hired a sports psychologist. I hired her on my own, but we had worked with her as a team quite a few times through the Canadian Sports Institute, and then Alberta Whitewater Association, and Alberta Slalom Canoe Kayak, and probably quite young, I don't know, and like just out of high school, like 18, 19. So I'd been working with her for a long time, and I went to the National Sports School. One of our classes was sports psychology, and you got an hour a week with a sports psychologist. So I was with this amazing...
This is a high school?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I was working with an amazing sports psychologist. Her name was Karen McNeil, and she's now a executive coach for major companies across the world. She's badass. And yeah, I learned a lot of things from her. But what I would say the things that really stuck out for me in my career were routine.
Routine
is huge. We were on the road for anywhere from 8 to 9 months. And I'd be away and have in and out of hotel rooms and have all these things going on. And you remember that when we were in university, I was always like there for the first semester and gone for the second. And I was always away. And the thing that I really needed was to have the same morning routine and the same before I go to bed routine. Because if I didn't have that, it made me miss home more, and it made me really out of whack. I really honed into it during the pandemic and before the pandemic, actually, but really honed into it that last 3 years before Olympic qualifications. And it was, I would wake up and I would go eat breakfast, and then I'd wake up and actually just backtrack. I'd wake up and I wouldn't look at my phone.
I remember that because you'd be on a different time zone, and I'd be messaging you, and you'd be like, okay, it's the end of my day. Now I'm responsive. Totally.
Because I didn't want to wake up and look at social media. It's all these things I'm saying now. I'm like, oh, I miss being an athlete because I'm so bad at it now. But anyways, my partner and I talk about this a lot. But so yeah, I'd wake up and I wouldn't look at my phone. I would go to breakfast, and I'd eat breakfast because I need to eat. I'm not a faster and all those things. And then I would come back to my room or my space, and I would do yoga of some sort, and then I would meditate with a guided app.
What's your go-to?
I was using Calm for a really long time.
Okay.
And then Waking Up with Sam Harris. I really like that one. And right now I'm using Insight Timer.
Okay. I'll plug these in the show notes after.
Yeah, they're good. And Calm you pay for. The International Olympic Committee gives us a free membership for life. It's pretty nice. But yeah, so meditate, and then I would journal. And I would just journal randomness, like I played back and forth with so many things of guided journaling or not. And the thing that really stuck out the best for me was just journaling how I was feeling. Like, I'm missing home, or okay, like really focus because you can do this. And then I would always write these same mantras to myself. I've actually reflected on journals recently, and like, it's like, I am strong, I am awesome, I am ready. You get to be here, and you get to take this on. And I would write that everywhere. And then I would draw this little picture of the spider, and I would say, be a spider in space. And I obsessively wrote it at the end of every journal entry. And then I would start my day for training. That was the big thing, is routine. And actually at breakfast, we'd have coffee, and I'd always bring my whole team. We all had different devices to make coffee, and we'd bring beans from home. And then like our outings on our days off would be going to like bougie coffee places and getting beans. And then we'd all taste all the beans. And yeah, it was, that was our thing. Cause you can't go do something elaborate, but you can go find that. That was the game changer for me, was really doing that. But then starting to work with my sports psychologist about cues and how you self-talk to yourself. So when I would start freaking out about something, or I'd start thinking about something, instead of letting that story unfold, I would start singing the same song over and over again. And
what was the reason for doing the singing?
Because it takes your mind off of it. Yeah, it takes your mind off of it. And yeah, and I remember a friend of mine, she's a mentor. She was my IST lead, integrated service team. She told me before I went to the start line at the Olympics, she gave me the book Think Like a Monk, and the whole pandemic and everything. It was hard. Anyways, but she wrote in there, do everything you can to get to that start line and be free at that start line. And I think that changed everything for me, because it just came down to like, how can you get to the thing that you want to do and be free to be there? And yeah, it took countless meditation and countless journaling and really prioritizing warm-ups and really prioritizing cool downs. And now, as a NARP, what we call ourselves, so I think I told you about this, but
no, but please gosh. Share.
Okay, NARP, so normal, average, regular person. NARPs. Yeah, so I'm a NARP now, but I find it really hard to incorporate that into my day. I find it really hard to meditate and journal every day.
Is it because other people are enforcing their routines on you and time schedules, or?
Being an athlete is the best job in the world. You don't make very much, but you have so much autonomy over your time, and you get to work out for a living.
Okay. And
travel the world. And yeah, you have to fundraise, and you need to show up at the start line and do well. But every single time you have a race, you have data of how to get better. It's really hard to find that in the corporate world, of the data, how to get better. And you ask for feedback and you don't get it. But when you have a race, you have direct feedback. You were 15th and you need to be here. You were 30th and you need to be 15th. Or like, it's direct feedback of how to be better. And it's the same in school. Like, I miss school a lot for that, because it's like you do a test and you either fail or pass. And then when it's like that direct feedback of, I studied enough or I didn't study enough.
So how do you hope to incorporate that into your work life?
I mean, I'm still working on it. Retiring has been tricky. As an athlete, your career is completely tied up in who you are, and your identity is your sport, and it's just like, it's so messy. And like, when you go to sleep and what you eat and what you prioritize directly affects how you perform. And yeah, now how I'm trying to incorporate it is, my physio, she's also a force, and I still work with her closely. She lives in Canmore. She always would say to me, don't should on yourself, which I love.
Don't should on yourself?
Yeah, instead of shitting on yourself. But it's should. Like, the shoulds. Like, I should wake up and meditate and journal. But
is she saying that from the stance of, you should just do it, or don't give yourself a hard time because you didn't do it?
Yeah, exactly. Don't give yourself a hard time because you didn't do it. I get, like, even this morning, I have a coach. I hired a coach because I'm training for a bike race. And I needed to do 2 workouts today, and I needed to do a bike before work. And then my second workout was gym. And I woke up and I felt like shit. And I came downstairs and I had my bike shorts on, and I was just like, okay, I got this. And Alex looked at me and was like, go back to bed. You look like shit. And I was like, Yeah. And I just needed that verification. Yeah. It took me 45 minutes to get out of bed and I was late to this workout and everything, but it's just coming back to the meditation and the journaling. It's a priority for me and I know that it'll help me be better. However, there's only so much you can do in a day in terms of like embetterment. Yeah. On my way to work, I listen to a podcast. On my way home from work, I listen to a podcast. I eat a healthy meal. Like you're almost overly inundated and overly working on yourself. So I think for me, I just have to choose. Like I find now as a NARP, as a normal person, I used to have a team of people helping me make decisions on when I should go to sleep, or routines that I'm building, what is going to give me that edge in sport. But now my team is me. And so I feel that I get a lot of decision fatigue in retirement. And I think that we, as overly stimulated people from this way that society's built, there's so many decisions, it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. So try and just focus on what was one thing that I did to help myself today.
That's a good approach.
So yeah, in sport, you're meticulous about it, but that's what got me to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Now I have a mom that has Alzheimer's and I basically have 2 lives because I manage that with my brother and I have a full-time job and we have a dog that we share. His name's Skokie.
The best.
He's great. Yeah, he's the best. And I have aspirations in my career that I want to meet and I want to stay fit and I want to spend time with my friends and my partner and I want to have all these things and something's got to give, right? And so if I don't have a perfect meditation routine with journaling every day, I did it for 15 years. It's okay for me to not be perfect right now.
I like that.
Yeah.
That allowance to just be, it's beautifully powerful.
It's so hard to practice, though.
It is so hard to practice.
It's hard to actually make happen, right? So
it's wild hearing. So you basically giving the insights of skills that you took from your Olympic background, and I guess at this stage wanting to include that in your daily life. And there are actually a lot of stuff that I'm trying to introduce now too. And I wish that I brought this stuff into my life a lot sooner.
Totally, yeah.
And so meditation and journaling were like my big thing in 2024. So without getting into it, obviously I had a life milestone.
What's your routine?
What's my routine?
Yeah.
So as of right now, I'm starting to get back into an early morning routine. So when I lived in San Francisco, I was a part of the 4:30 a.m. club. Okay, yeah. And I'd wake up like several hours before my partner and just read or just do something for myself. That was still at a phase in my life where like I didn't need as much sleep. So now I'm training myself to start wake up at 5:30, which means I have to start going to bed a little bit earlier. The first thing I do in the morning is meditate.
Yeah.
I spend about 15, 20 minutes doing that. I think it's a blend of hitting snooze / like getting my head right for the day, which that internal dialogue that you're talking about is so important. I've been working on that for a while too. So I will openly admit that my internal voices for the last 4 months have been a little trickier to navigate. So meditation has been so good.
Don't shit on yourself.
Yeah.
But really, it's like, you know that you need to improve it, and that's like the first step. Right? Yeah.
And I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And that's the beautiful part about the next thing about my routine, which is journaling, because it does give me that data, that feedback. If you take the time to go back into your journal entries and also acknowledging sidebar that journaling you don't have to come into a journaling session with intention. It's just literally just write what comes out.
Which is funny, right?
Yeah.
Because you feel like you need to have intention for everything, but then it's like, just do.
But that's obviously what you needed to get off your plate.
Yeah.
So I've written out all this stuff and I can go back to 4 months ago and be like, that's where I was at. And so I have that data, I have that feedback. So that's my routine right now. Bedtime, respecting yours here too. I got to be on top of it, but basically shutting off at 9:30, giving myself red light. So I have a salt lamp that I turn on and I'll read versus stare at my phone or I'll journal again. So that's my routines. But
yeah, it's important. It's that Sleep is something that
Protect it at all costs.
I need 9 to 10 hours.
Your body's still catching up from all the work you've done.
So that's been an adjustment, but it's a high priority for me. So yeah, I tend not to socialize as much during the week as much, and on the weekends that's when I get to see my friends, and I try and sleep early, and it's made such a difference though.
Yeah.
And they say you need like a sleep bucket. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were saying that it takes 8 to 10 sleeps for you to fill your bucket for you to feel good again. So if you have one bad sleep, it's going to take 8 to 10 sleeps again for you to get to that bucket. So it's not just about 1 or 2 nights. It's like about consistency more than it is about 1 or 2 nights of good sleep.
Noted. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah. And that one was because we had a bad night. No, but you got to live your life too, right? Like, I love having a beer and like staying out and doing stuff with friends, but like with a grain of salt, right? Like you can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I want to ask the question, you brought it up before, but this was around, so sport was very much your life when you're getting ready for the Olympics. So you traveled a lot. There was a period in time when I get a little more Haley time, and it was after the Olympics. And some of our conversations were wrapped up around your identity after retirement. I want to dive into that a little bit because you did a lot of work on that, and I think you still are doing some work on it.
It's a lifelong journey for sure.
So post-retirement, what is it that most athletes kind of experience, and how are you working on it?
Yeah, I don't know the narrative fully of what all athletes experience, but I would say the thing that a lot of people that have retired have talked about is that in sport, you become a perfectionist. Whether you are a perfectionist or not, you have to be. So you're obsessed with whatever that thing that's going to give you that 2 seconds or 3 seconds. And when you take that into the corporate world, it's not that easy. But something that I actually really noticed, I noticed this recently actually, but in sport, you get direct feedback constantly. So you're getting feedback from you do a run, and then you'll, like in paddling, you'll do a section, and then you'll get out of your boat and you'll come up to your coach, and your coach will be like, this was good, this was bad, do this better, and then you go do it again. And then you'll do this was good, this is bad, do it again, or that was excellent, keep doing that. And then you try and do it again, and you're like, what happened? Right? And then you'll look at video, and then you'll examine the video of that exact thing, and you'll keep on going through that direct feedback, and you look to someone constantly to give you that feedback. But in the corporate world, it is not normal to get direct feedback like that. It is not normal to get straight up feedback like that. And so I expected that when I went into it work, and then I was like, oh, I'm not getting transparent feedback here.
So you were asking for it.
So I'm constantly having to ask for it. Not now in my role. I have a really good relationship with my team, and I ask for feedback all the time, and I hope that I get those candid answers. But it's just different in the corporate world because sport is, you're transparent about a skill, and it's detached from you. Where corporate world, it's like, you could get fired, and there's so many things, right? So there's a lot on the line, but so I think a lot of athletes struggle with that. But when I did retire, when I finally made a decision to do that, I really struggled sitting at a desk.
Oh, I bet.
That was just the hardest thing. Like,
I didn't even think about that.
8 hours staring at a screen.
Nobody's meant for that, let alone
my gosh, yes,
an athlete.
I was working at RBC, and that's when I did a 180, and I became a firefighter. Realized that wasn't the pathway that I really wanted, but it was such a cool little pivot for a bit. I learned a lot, because I was like, oh, like firefighters don't sit at a desk. Yeah, but just my calling for sponsorships and partnerships and marketing always was there when I was doing fires. Yeah. So
let's talk about that now, because obviously you've been retired for a couple of years. You've not segued, but you've moved into kind of a corporate leader role. How has your experiences as an Olympian transitioned you into these types of roles? So you are doing sponsorships for the Banff Center, which is world renowned, and you just, I I say just, but you had the Banff Film Festival, which was your baby for a full year.
It's still my baby.
It's still your baby. Yeah. So yeah, what does a day in the life look like, and how does your past experiences overlay into that?
Yeah. So with being a really broke athlete, I needed to figure out how to fundraise and generate revenue in a way that I could do that while I was competing. I learned so much about sponsorships and fundraising and philanthropy and communication, and that's how I found my passion for the partnership world. And what I take into it now is that even though there's massive dollars on the line, doesn't mean that it's industry standard. And I think, so that's what I'm working on now, is we talked about that earlier, but trying to bring everything to an industry standard. But day to day, I love my role. It's super cool. I feel like it's made for me sometimes. Like
it seemed that way. I remember when you were going after it, and there was that period of time you just accepted a role somewhere.
Yeah.
And then I think you were about 3 weeks, a month into it, and Banff Center came knocking. And you're like, what do I do? And like, obviously you have to take it.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I had to take it. It was like
in your backyard.
In my backyard, like a hybrid position. We work in office and from home. So I managed the sponsorships, 50 plus partners for the Banff Mountain Film Festival, which is 450 shows across North America. And then we have 1,200 shows across the world.
Wow.
And we even have a show on the International Space Station.
No way.
Yeah, so random. The person who was in my role before, she was there for a very long time, and she built the sponsorship portfolio from the ground up. I still have a lot of big shoes to fill, because she did so much, and she really just let stuff roll off her back too, which was awesome. Just industry things. And I basically get to prospect really cool brands, Arc'teryx and Osprey and Subaru, and basically any outdoor brand or outdoor adjacent brand. And then I find that crazy that those brands you get to work with in your corporate job, because you also have involvement with them when you were totally. I'm an Arc'teryx ambassador now, and I still get to work with a lot of. It's just funny, and that's what I mean. Where I think but then I still get to, on the other side of things, I manage the partnerships with the Banff Center, so I still get to talk to more like bigger brands. We're looking next year to do some sponsorships for our Summer Arts Festival. So our Summer Arts Festival runs all summer in Banff and has amazing artists and jazz and ballet, and it's just, there's so many things that go on there. So it's cool, because that'll be a little bit of a different challenge for me. But what I learned from sport that I take into the job now is that tailoring what you say and how you say it is everything. And your relationship with the person, getting a meeting is always better when there was a referral. And analytics can only get you so far, but how you work with that person is everything. And I think that the sponsorships at the festival are so great because Lori stewarded them so well. And yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Like, we have so many things going on with AI, and they talk about careers being replaced, but I really think that you cannot replace a relationship that you have with someone, of a connection, or how you treat someone and how you personalize something. Mm-hmm. So I try and take that into everything I do, but also recognize that my time needs to be efficient. So personalizing with project management tools and automation and for reminders, and really trying to deliver high quality versus high quantity.
I've always seen you as a person that's really authentic. So
thank you.
When this position came available for you and you got to continue that sponsorship engagement, I knew it was going to be a great position for you. And it's so nice to see that you do put such a focus into the relationships that you have with these partners. And I'm sure that this is only going to get better for you with time. And the more corporations you get to work with, I'm I said it before, I'm fully expecting a book at some point in time. There is going to be one.
Right.
Oh, yeah. AI is going to cover that aspect. All you got to do is talk now. But that's great. Proudest moments. So reflecting on your journey, what are some of your proudest moments from your sports career, and how have these moments influenced your personal and your professional growth?
It's tricky. I feel like it's a tricky question because
maybe they're not exactly.
No, I look at some of my proudest moments from my athletic career, and I'm very proud on how much money I was able to raise and how I was able to build a personal brand and like really run it like a business. And that was something that I like will take into every role that I have. But it's funny because when you ask that question, the first thing that comes to my mind is sitting on the start line in Tokyo and being the third female to ever race women's canoe ever in the world. In history.
I remember watching that.
And I was like smiling at the start line, even though I had the worst race of my life. But that first one, I was like, oh, it's so bad. But I was just like smiling. I was like, whatever happens, like when I cross this start line, I'm an Olympian. And that was because of the efforts that we fought. But now sitting in this chair and you asking me that, it's really hard to repeat that. What am I working towards now? It's very hard to repeat that huge moment and feel those same highs that you feel in sport. I know you ask about what are a lot of athletes' struggles. Like in sport, you're just constantly on a high.
Your highs are very high.
Your highs are very high. Your lows are very low.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to find that in a normal life, to have those constant highs that you have complete autonomy over. So, yeah, that's definitely something I'm grappling with, but I am still very proud of that, but I wouldn't say it defines everything I do. But my proudest moment, something I'm working towards now, my friend of mine and I, we started the Canmore Women's Enduro, and it's a race for anyone who identifies as female for mountain biking. And we had a sold out event last year, and we just had so many women that were so stoked to race. So many women that had never raced before because they were afraid of racing with men, and came and raced, and they felt comfortable. And yeah, so I guess I'm just really proud to be able to have that inclusive event and bring it back. And even though it's a lot of work and it's all volunteer,
yeah,
I love it. So
well, it gives you an outlet, and it seems to be right on the path that you set with the Olympics as well, and bringing female sport and opportunity. So that makes complete sense. I'll be sure to also add that in the show notes so people can sign up. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, the after party's a good time.
That's one thing that Canmore really does do well, is the after events, after all of these things. So evolving definition of success. As you look back on your career, how did you envision your path when you were younger compared to where you are now? How has your definition of success evolved over time?
I remember it was a sports psychologist that I worked with adjacently. She wasn't my primary sports psychologist, but she asked me, what does success mean to you? And I literally didn't have an answer. And she's, can I give you my example? And she was like, I think success is being content. And that has sat with me my whole life when she said that, because I was like, success is being content. Success is not being hungry for what's next, being happy with what you've done. And I don't feel that now. I don't know if I feel successful, but I think what success means to me now is very different than what success meant to me as an athlete. And I think success to me now is being able to share my life with the people I love and be healthy and happy and not sweat the small things and work, like all good things take hard work. So, yeah, as long as I have moments that I can share with people I love, I think I'm successful.
That always puts a big smile on my face. We didn't talk about your relationship with social media. I'm fully anticipating in another year I'm going to have you back. But something that always makes me happy is seeing your little weekend adventures and the groups that you do it with and the genuine smile. So in preparation for doing podcasts, I've been studying a lot on like body language and communication skills. And one of the points is like identifying authentic and real smiles. And like you genuinely, you can tell when you aren't faking it. There is a great, the way that your face is completely lit up. And so I love hearing that. I love seeing that you are getting that much closer to having just unlimited amount of time to share, or great events to share with people you love.
Absolutely.
Future of equality in sport. Where do you hope to see female representation and equality in sports heading in the future? And what role do you see yourself as an advocate in this space?
It is so cool to watch women's soccer take off and women's basketball. Women's hockey is still working on it, but like there's more viewership of women's soccer games and basketball games. Not more, but definitely more sold
Increased.
out events and venues. And I'd love to see more of that here in Calgary, but I think just like equal pay opportunities. Right now, if a young girl dreams to be a professional hockey player, there's not that many opportunities to make Team Canada. Where as a young boy, if you want to be a professional hockey player, it's like you have an entire league that pays you millions of dollars.
There's also less recognized leagues outside of North America that you could always move to.
Right? There's so much opportunity, and that's similar in a lot of professional sport. And amateur sport is just pays like shit regardless. But unless you're a tennis player, then you're making it. But or golf. But I think just I would love there to be more funding opportunities and recognition that how sport like really makes a difference in the community, and having funding with that. Like, And how do I want to be part of that? I sit on quite a few boards right now that help with that. The Coaching Effect Canada, and I was previously on the Calgary Booster Club. I had to step down just because of the commitment coming to Calgary too much. But I'm trying to do it with our women's enduro. I'm trying to do it with just as much as I can, but also recognizing that there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. I get it. The last two questions here. Can you share a moment when you felt you truly pioneered a legacy for the future in women's sports?
I shared some of those moments, but I think when I've truly felt that we pioneered a legacy, I think, as I mentioned before, I worked a role in broadcasting. I worked for the Olympic Broadcasting Services, OBS is that called. So they are the middle person between the rights holders, which is like NBC and CBC and like Channel 9, like all the major right holders for the Olympics, and then the athletes' interviews, and then the broadcasting of the sport, because OBS does the broadcasting and the rights holders buy the broadcasting rights. And being at the Olympics and not being an athlete, being there as personnel working. And I got to work the venue that I used to do with canoe slalom. And I actually, during COVID, lived at the venue in Paris. So know that place really well. It was really cool to see it with all the Olympic legacy to it. But yeah, also had some like dark memories from there, because we had to be in a bubble and only interact with my team. And
yeah, I remember us sending you videos.
Yeah. Oh my God. Cried my ass off when you guys sent those. But yeah, to preface that, my brother brought together all the people that had been a part of my life and still a part of my life, and they wrote letters and videos and to just tell me to hang in there, and it meant so much to me. So thank you for that. But I think when I was at the Olympics in Paris, watching the Olympics I was at, there was no one there because of COVID, but being able to watch women's canoeing have a sold out crowd and the same amount of people sitting there as the K1 men was so cool. And seeing the women's canoe get the same amount of publicity and the same amount of respect, and to see how far the sport has come, like how close the top 10 boats were like 2 seconds of each other. It's just so cool to know that it's there and it's getting pushed, and those boundaries are getting pushed, and like people know about it like that. Yeah, like it took our legacy to get there, and I'm so proud to be part of it. And now there's these women pushing it now, and I'm so proud of them.
They took your baton.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
amazing. So here's the last question. What message or piece of wisdom would you like to leave with younger listeners as they navigate their own unique paths?
Figure out what you don't like, because that'll bring you closer to what you do like. I would say there are so many choices and it is really overwhelming, and there's a lot of pressure from so many areas. But younger me, I actually don't think I actually ever let pressure to get to me until I was way older. And now I have low level anxiety all the time. But I would say just lean into that. Yeah. And also recovery is not bullshit. Recovery is really important. Whether you're an athlete, whether you're a person working, whether you're a person in university, or like down days, and not down days like where you're on social media all day or gaming, or like really low stimulation, low level days, and bringing creativity into it. So like when I have days off, I'll draw or read or like literally lie and look at the sky or something. Like and it's so hard to incorporate those, but when I do, I feel so much better. Always. And when I leave those out, there's diminishing returns. So recovery, number 1, and number 2, understand what you don't like, because you shouldn't do something for someone else. So if you don't like math, but your parents tell you that you should be an accountant, know that you don't like math. So figure out another career to go into. Yeah.
Thanks for that. It was something that I was doing at the very beginning of the podcast, of just giving a moment of appreciation. So obviously this podcast wouldn't happen, at least initially, without my group of friends.
Absolutely.
So I am very fortunate, and I do consider myself a very lucky person because of people that I have in my life. And you're one of the people that I wish I could spend as much time as possible with. But the reason why when we're together it feels so powerful is because I know I don't know where I'm going with this other than I might have to approach it again, but I just want to say I appreciate our friendship. Every time that I'm with you, I have a big smile. Our conversations are very rarely about gossip and stuff like that. And It's always about improvements and real deep conversations. And it's just nice to have somebody like you in my life. So I appreciate every second with you. So thank you for making the time. I know you have a busy schedule. That concludes our episode with Haley Daniels. So if you made it this far, thank you so much. You're a real G. And remember, share, help get this out there, follow. We need the community. It's always about the community to grow anything. So thank you very much, and let's get after it. Thank you so much.